My name is George Bishop, and I used to think I had it all figured out. 38 years old, successful real estate developer in suburban Boston, beautiful wife, 2 kids, and a house that could grace the cover of Better Homes and Gardens. The American dream, right? Well, turns out the American dream can become a nightmare faster than you can say foreclosure. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. It started with little things. Veronica staying late at work more often. Her phone buzzing at odd hours with client emergencies. The way she'd smile at her screen while typing messages. The same smile she used to give me when we were dating 15 years ago. Another late night at the marketing firm? I asked one Thursday evening as she grabbed her keys and designer purse. You know how it is, George. The Peterson campaign needs to launch next week. She didn't even look at me as she spoke, just checked her reflection in the hallway mirror. I'll probably crash at Mom's place. She's been feeling under the weather. I nodded, watching our 7-year-old Emma color at the kitchen table, while 9-year-old Jake played video games in the living room. Normal family scene, except for the wife, who couldn't wait to escape it. After Veronica left, I called my mother-in-law, Mary. She answered on the second ring, sounding perfectly healthy and completely confused. Veronica? No, dear, I haven't heard from her today. I'm feeling fine. Why would you think I was sick? That's when I started keeping what I privately called my cheater's journal. Every suspicious text, every unexplained absence, every time she came home smelling like unfamiliar cologne. I'm a detail-oriented guy. It's what made me successful in real estate, and I applied those same skills to documenting my wife's lies. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later when I hired a private investigator named Frank Morrison, former Boston PD, built like a bulldog, and worth every penny of his $500 retainer. Your wife's having an affair, Frank told me over coffee at a diner downtown. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Guy named Darren Lowe. Owns a gym called Flex Appeal about 10 minutes from your house. I opened the envelope with steady hands, though my heart was hammering. Photos of Veronica and a tall, muscular guy with perfectly styled hair entering the Marriott downtown. Hotel receipts. Screenshots of text messages that made my stomach turn. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again. Veronica. Your husband has no idea what he's missing. Darren. Maybe it's time he found out what a real man looks like. Veronica. There's more, Frank said, lighting a cigarette despite the no smoking sign. This Darren character has been asking questions about your business. Real specific questions about your company structure, your assets, your client list. I looked up from the photos. What kind of questions? The kind that suggests this isn't just about getting laid. Your wife's been feeding him information about your finances, your business partnerships, everything. I think they're planning something bigger than just an affair. That night, I sat in my home office staring at the evidence spread across my desk. 15 years of marriage, 2 beautiful children, a business I'd built from nothing, and my wife was plotting to destroy it all for some gym rat with abs and the moral compass of a snake. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and started planning. If Veronica wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real player looked like. But first, I needed to know exactly what she and her muscle-bound boyfriend were planning. The next evening, Veronica came home around 11, claiming she'd been working late again. I was waiting in the living room with a glass of wine and my most understanding smile. Rough day at the office? I asked. You have no idea. She kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the couch beside me. The Peterson campaign is falling apart. I might need to work this weekend too. That's funny, I said, keeping my voice casual. I talked to Jim Peterson today about that commercial property on Elm Street. He mentioned his campaign wrapped up last week, said it was one of the smoothest launches he'd ever had. The color drained from Veronica's face, but she recovered quickly. Oh, that Peterson. I meant the other Peterson account. You wouldn't know them. Right. The other Peterson. I took a sip of wine and studied her face. 15 years of marriage had taught me to read her expressions like a road map. The slight tightening around her eyes meant she was scrambling for another lie. The way she touched her neck meant she was getting defensive. So tell me about this other Peterson account. What kind of marketing do they need? It's complicated. Corporate restructuring stuff. Very boring. I love boring business talk. Try me. She stood up abruptly. I'm exhausted, George. Can we discuss my work some other time? Sure thing, honey. But before you head upstairs, I'm curious about something else. How's your mother feeling? I was thinking of sending flowers. Veronica froze halfway to the staircase. My mother? You said she was sick. That's why you stayed there last night, right? And Tuesday night and last Friday. She's better. Much better. No need for flowers. I set down my wine glass and stood up, walking slowly toward her. That's strange, because I called her earlier today. She sounded perfectly healthy. Said she hadn't seen you in 2 weeks. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. I could see her mind racing, trying to come up with another lie, another excuse. But I was done with lies. So, let me ask you again, Veronica. Where have you really been spending your nights? And who is Darren Lowe? Her face went white as fresh paint. How do you know about your gym boyfriend? About the hotel rooms? About the cozy little text messages where you discuss what a pathetic husband I am? I pulled out my phone and started reading from Frank's screenshots. George is so clueless. He actually thinks I'm working late. That was Tuesday. Wednesday you sent. Can't wait to leave him and take half of everything he's worked for. Veronica's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. George, I can explain. Oh, I'm sure you can. You're very creative with explanations. But here's the thing that really interests me, sweetheart. It's not just the cheating, it's the planning. You and Darren have been discussing my business, my assets, my partnerships. You've been feeding him inside information like he's your business partner instead of your boy toy. That's not true? Let me finish reading these texts. George's partner Andrew is the weak link. If we can turn him against George, we can force a buyout. And my personal favorite. Once I file for divorce, we can claim George is mentally unstable. I've been documenting his drinking and mood swings. I looked up from the phone to see tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone who'd been caught red-handed. So, here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice deadly calm. You're going to sit down, and you're going to tell me exactly what you and Darren have been planning. Every detail, every scheme, every lie you've prepared. Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of woman you really are. She collapsed back onto the couch, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. You don't understand, George. You've changed. You're not the man I married. You're right. The man you married was naive enough to trust you. But that man is gone. I sat down across from her, leaning forward with my elbows on my knees. Now start talking. And Veronica, if you lie to me one more time tonight, I promise you'll regret it for the rest of your life. The confession took 3 hours. 3 hours of tears, lies, half-truths, and finally, the ugly reality of what my wife had become. By the time she finished talking, it was past 2 a.m, and I felt like I'd aged 10 years. Darren Lowe wasn't just her lover, he was her business partner in a scheme to destroy me. They'd been planning it for months, ever since Veronica reconnected with him at their college reunion. The affair was just the beginning. The real goal was to force me out of my own company and take half my assets in a messy divorce. We were going to wait until after the holidays, Veronica admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Darren has connections with some investors who wanted to buy into your business. If we could make it look like you were having a breakdown, Andrew would be forced to choose between you and the company's future. And you thought Andrew would choose you over his best friend since college? Darren can be very persuasive. He knows how to make people see things his way. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean he knows how to manipulate people, just like he manipulated you? It wasn't manipulation, she snapped, showing the first flash of real emotion all night. Darren understands me. He sees my potential. You just see me as your wife, the mother of your children. He sees me as a woman. He sees you as a meal ticket, Veronica. A way to get his hands on a successful business without having to build one himself. She stood up and started pacing around the living room. You don't know him like I do. I know enough. I know he's been married twice before. I know his gym is hemorrhaging money. I know he's been asking you very specific questions about our finances and our business structure. I pulled out another sheet from Frank's file. I also know he's been telling his buddies at the gym about his rich girlfriend, who's going to set him up for life. Veronica stopped pacing. That's not true. Frank recorded him bragging about it at the gym's juice bar. Want to hear the audio? Her shoulders sagged in defeat. What do you want from me, George? I want you to understand that your little scheme is over. I want you to realize that you've thrown away 15 years of marriage and a family for a con artist who sees you as a stepping stone. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our manicured lawn and the house we'd built together. But mostly, I want you to know that if you think I'm going to roll over and let you and your boyfriend destroy everything I've worked for, you're even more naive than I thought. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Flex Appeal Gym. It was one of those trendy places with exposed brick walls, industrial lighting, and membership fees that cost more than most people's car payments. The kind of place where people went to be seen working out, rather than actually getting in shape. I found Darren Lowe in his office, a glass-walled space that overlooked the main workout floor. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, built like a Marvel superhero, with the kind of artificially white smile that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. You must be George, he said, standing up and extending his hand like we were old friends. Veronica's told me so much about you. I ignored the handshake. I'm sure she has. Just like you've told your gym buddies so much about your rich girlfriend. His smile faltered slightly. I think there might be some misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding is you thinking I'm stupid enough to let you steal my wife and my business without a fight. I sat down in the chair across from his desk without being invited. But I'm not here to threaten you, Darren. I'm here to make you an offer. What kind of offer? The kind where you walk away from my wife and my family, and I don't destroy your life. He laughed, but I could see the nervousness in his eyes. You can't threaten me, George. This is America. Veronica's free to make her own choices. You're absolutely right. She is free to make her own choices, and you're free to pursue any woman you want. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. But you're not free to conspire to defraud me out of my business. You're not free to plan a scheme based on inside information my wife provided. And you're definitely not free to do it without consequences. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and played one of Frank's recordings. Darren's voice filled the small office, bragging to his friends about how he was going to score big with his desperate housewife and her loaded husband. The color drained from his face. That's taken out of context. Is it? Let me play the part where you discuss using Veronica's inside information about my business partnerships to force a hostile takeover. I scrolled through the audio files. Or maybe you'd prefer the recording where you describe exactly how you plan to manipulate my business partner, Andrew. Darren stood up abruptly. You need to leave. Now. I'm not done yet. I remained seated, perfectly calm. You see, Darren, I've spent the last 3 weeks learning everything about you. Your failed marriages, your mounting debts, your history of targeting wealthy women. Did you know your second wife took out a restraining order against you? That was a misunderstanding. Was it? Because according to the police report, you emptied her bank accounts and tried to steal her car when she filed for divorce. He walked around the desk, trying to use his size to intimidate me. Get out of my office. I stood up slowly, matching his stare. Here's what's going to happen, Darren. You're going to end things with my wife. You're going to disappear from our lives completely. And you're going to forget every piece of information she shared with you about my business. And if I don't? Then I'm going to share everything I know about you with your gym members, your investors, and your creditors. I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you really are. I smiled, but it wasn't friendly. I'm also going to share those recordings with my lawyer, who's very interested in discussing fraud charges with the district attorney. Darren stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne and see the vein pulsing in his forehead. You think you can scare me with lawyers and recordings? I've dealt with bigger threats than some suburban real estate developer. Have you? Because I don't think you understand what you're dealing with here. I pulled out another file folder. This contains financial records showing that your gym is 3 months behind on rent. It contains statements from 2 of your investors who are already asking questions about their money. It contains testimony from your ex-wives about your pattern of targeting financially successful women. I set the folder on his desk. It also contains a very detailed plan for how I'm going to systematically destroy your reputation, your business, and your future in this town. The only question is whether you want to do this the easy way or the hard way. Darren grabbed the folder and flipped through it, his face growing paler with each page. How did you get all this? I told you, I'm very good at research. It's what made me successful in real estate. I straightened my tie and headed for the door. You have 24 hours to make your decision, Darren. After that, I start making phone calls. That evening, I got home to find Veronica waiting for me in the kitchen. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Darren called me, she said without preamble. He told me about your visit. Good. Then you know where things stand. You can't do this, George. You can't threaten people just because you're angry. I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. I'm not threatening anyone, Veronica. I'm simply making it clear that actions have consequences. You and your boyfriend thought you could scheme against me without any pushback. You were wrong. What do you want from me? I want you to choose. Your family or your boy toy. Your marriage or your fantasy. But you can't have both. She started crying again. The same manipulative tears she'd been using our entire marriage whenever she wanted something. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You either end things with Darren and we try to rebuild our marriage, or you don't and we proceed with a divorce where I make sure everyone knows exactly why our marriage ended. You would really humiliate me like that? In front of our friends? Our children? You humiliated yourself, Veronica. I'm just deciding whether to keep it private or make it public. I finished my water and rinsed the glass in the sink. You have until tomorrow night to decide. After that, I start sharing those photos and recordings with anyone who'll listen. Veronica chose Darren. She told me her decision the next evening with all the drama of a soap opera actress, complete with tears and declarations about following her heart and finding her true self. I listened to the whole performance with the detached interest of someone watching a bad movie. I need time to figure things out, she concluded, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. I'm going to stay at my sister's place for a while. Take all the time you need, I replied calmly. But understand that the moment you walk out that door, there's no coming back. I'm not going to be your safety net while you play house with your boyfriend. She packed 2 suitcases and left that same night, pausing at the door to deliver one final manipulative speech about how I'd driven her away with my controlling behavior and emotional distance. I nodded and wished her luck, then locked the door behind her. The next few weeks were a strange mix of relief and rage. Relief because I no longer had to pretend our marriage was working. Rage because Veronica was already spreading her version of events to anyone who would listen. According to her narrative, I was an emotionally abusive husband who'd become increasingly unstable and controlling. She was just a victim trying to escape a toxic situation. The story might have been believable if I hadn't had evidence to the contrary. But I did, and I was ready to use it. I spent 2 weeks carefully planning what I privately called Operation Open House. If Veronica wanted to make our private business public, I'd give her more publicity than she could handle. The plan was simple. Throw a party and invite everyone who mattered in our social and professional circles. Present it as a moving forward celebration, complete with a slideshow of family memories. But halfway through the presentation, the memories would shift to something more recent, like hotel receipts and text message screenshots. I sent out invitations to 60 people, our neighbors, my business associates, Veronica's co-workers, mutual friends, even some of the parents from our kids' school. The invitation described it as a celebration of new beginnings and promised food, drinks, and some surprising revelations about recent changes in the Bishop family. Most people RSVP'd yes, probably expecting some kind of awkward divorce announcement. They had no idea what they were really walking into. The party was scheduled for Saturday evening. On Friday afternoon, Veronica called. "I heard about your party," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. "What are you planning, George?" "Just a little get-together. You're welcome to come if you want. Bring Darren." "This isn't funny. People are asking questions about why you're throwing a party right after we separated." "Are they? What kind of questions?" "They want to know if we're getting back together. They want to know what surprising revelations means." I smiled into the phone. "I guess they'll have to wait until tomorrow night to find out." "George, please. Think about the children. Think about our reputation." "I am thinking about them. I'm thinking about how they deserve to know the truth about why their mother abandoned them for a gym owner with a criminal record." There was a long silence. "Darren doesn't have a criminal record." "Check again. Frank found some very interesting information about your boyfriend's past. Turns out he's been arrested twice for fraud and once for assault. Nothing that stuck, but still interesting reading." "You're lying." "Am I? Ask him about the incident in Miami 3 years ago. Ask him about the woman in Chicago who lost her life savings investing in his fitness empire." The line went dead. She'd hung up on me. Saturday evening arrived with perfect weather and a house full of curious guests. I'd hired a catering company and set up a projector in the living room for the slideshow. Everyone mingled with drinks and appetizers while I played the role of gracious host, accepting condolences about my separation and deflecting questions about Veronica's absence. At 8 o'clock, I called for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began, standing in front of the projection screen. "I know many of you have questions about recent changes in my family situation. Rather than address rumors and speculation, I thought it would be better to share the truth directly." I clicked the remote, and the first slide appeared, a wedding photo of Veronica and me from 15 years ago. The crowd murmured appreciatively. "Veronica and I have shared many wonderful memories over the years," I continued, clicking through photos of vacations, holidays, and family gatherings. "We built a life together, raised 2 beautiful children, and created what I thought was a strong partnership." More slides. The kids' birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family barbecues in our backyard. I could see people relaxing, probably expecting a sentimental divorce announcement. But recently, I discovered that not all of our memories were as genuine as I believed. Click. The slide changed to a hotel receipt from the Marriott downtown. For example, this receipt from 3 weeks ago, when Veronica told me she was working late at the office. The room went silent. I could feel the tension ratchet up as people realized this wasn't going to be a typical divorce announcement. Or this interesting text message conversation. Click. The slide showed screenshots of Veronica's messages with Darren, carefully edited to remove the most explicit content but leaving the emotional betrayal crystal clear. Someone gasped. I heard whispered conversations starting around the room. "Now I know what you're thinking," I continued, my voice steady and calm. "Marriages end. People cheat. It's unfortunate but not uncommon." Click. But what makes this situation unique is the level of planning and deception involved. The next slide showed a timeline I'd created, documenting months of lies, secret meetings, and financial scheming. You see, this wasn't just an affair. This was a coordinated effort to destroy my reputation, steal my business, and manipulate our mutual friends into taking sides based on false information. I could see shocked faces throughout the room. My business partner, Andrew, looked pale. Several of our neighbors were staring at the screen in disbelief. For instance, how many of you heard that I've been drinking heavily and becoming emotionally abusive? I asked. A few people shifted uncomfortably. That narrative was carefully constructed and spread through our social circle as part of a plan to isolate me and make Veronica's departure seem justified. Click. The next slide showed more text messages, these ones discussing the scheme to turn people against me. The goal was simple: make me look unstable, turn my business partner against me, and force a situation where Veronica could claim half of everything I've built while positioning herself as the victim of an abusive marriage. The room was dead silent now. I could see people looking at each other, probably remembering conversations they'd had with Veronica over the past few weeks. But here's the part that really impressed me with its audacity. Click. The final slide showed financial documents and business records. My wife and her boyfriend actually believed they could force me out of my own company and take over my client relationships. They had investors lined up, partnership agreements drafted, and a complete business plan for what they called the post-George era. That's when the front door opened, and Veronica walked in. She'd clearly been crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Behind her was Darren, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "Turn it off, George," Veronica said, her voice shaking. "Please, just turn it off." The entire room turned to stare at her. 60 people, all of whom had just learned the truth about her betrayal, watching as she stood in the doorway of what used to be her home. "Hello, Veronica," I said calmly. "I wondered if you'd show up. There's still some wine left if you'd like a drink." "This is cruel and humiliating." "Is it? I thought it was educational. How many of these people did you lie to about me over the past month? How many of them did you try to turn against me with your stories about my supposed drinking problem and emotional instability?" Darren stepped forward, trying to look intimidating in his designer workout clothes. "That's enough, man. You've made your point." "Have I?" I looked around the room at all the shocked faces. "I don't think I have, actually. See? I haven't told them about your criminal record yet, Darren, or about the 2 previous wives you defrauded, or about your gym's financial problems." "You're a sick man," Veronica said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm a man who refuses to be a victim," I replied. "You wanted to play games with my reputation and my livelihood. You wanted to turn my friends against me and steal my business. Well, congratulations, you got my attention." Andrew stepped forward from the crowd. "George, maybe we should..." "Should what, Andrew? Should I have kept quiet while my wife and her boyfriend plotted to force me out of the company we built together? Should I have let them spread lies about me being unstable and abusive?" I looked directly at him. "They had plans for you too, by the way. Once they got rid of me, they were going to offer you a partnership deal that would have left you with 30% of a company you helped create." Andrew's face went white. "What?" "It's all documented. Financial projections, partnership agreements, investor commitments. They had it all planned out." Veronica was sobbing now, and several people were starting to look uncomfortable with the whole situation. But I wasn't done yet. "The truth is, I could have handled this privately. I could have filed for divorce, fought it out in court, and kept our dirty laundry out of the public eye." I clicked off the projector and faced the crowd. But Veronica chose to make it public when she started spreading lies about me to anyone who would listen. She chose to involve all of you when she tried to manipulate your opinions and turn you against me. I walked over to where she stood, crying in the doorway. You wanted everyone to know your version of events. Well, now they know the real version. Darren put his arm around Veronica's shoulders, a gesture that might have looked protective if not for the fact that he was clearly terrified. Come on, baby, let's get out of here. Good idea, I said. But Darren, before you go, I have something for you. I pulled out a manila envelope and handed it to him. That's a copy of everything I shared tonight, plus some additional information I thought you might find interesting, like the fact that your gym's lease is being terminated next month, and your primary investor is pulling out after learning about your relationship with a married woman. He opened the envelope and quickly scanned the contents, his face growing paler with each page. You can't do this, he said weakly. I just did. I smiled pleasantly. But don't worry, I'm sure you'll land on your feet. You always do, right? At least until the next husband figures out what you're really after. As Veronica and Darren left, the crowd began to disperse. Some people avoided eye contact with me, probably uncomfortable with what they'd witnessed. Others came over to shake my hand and express their support. Andrew was the last to leave. Jesus, George, I had no idea. I know you didn't. That's what made you such an attractive target for them. What happens now? Now we get back to business, and we make sure something like this never happens again. After everyone left, I poured myself a bourbon and sat in my empty living room, surrounded by the remnants of the party. It had been a brutal evening, but necessary. Veronica and Darren had tried to destroy my life through lies and manipulation. I'd simply returned the favor with truth and evidence. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. This isn't over. I smiled and typed back, yes, it is. The text message turned out to be from Darren, and he was wrong about it being over. If anything, my little presentation had just been the opening act. Over the next few days, I learned that humiliating someone publicly doesn't always make them retreat. Sometimes it makes them desperate. Veronica called me Monday morning, her voice hoarse from crying. You've destroyed everything, George. Everything. I've destroyed lies, Veronica. I've destroyed schemes and manipulations. The truth doesn't destroy anything that was real to begin with. My job is asking questions. My sister doesn't want me staying at her house anymore. People are staring at me everywhere I go. Actions have consequences. You should have considered that before you decided to betray your family. What about the children? What happens when they find out what you did? That hit me where it hurt, but I kept my voice steady. The children will learn that their father refused to be a victim. They'll learn that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it's difficult. They'll learn that their father is a vindictive bastard who humiliated their mother in front of the entire town. They'll learn the truth, Veronica. All of it, including why their mother chose a con artist over her own family. She hung up on me, but I knew she'd call back. Desperate people always do. The call came that afternoon, but it wasn't from Veronica. It was from my lawyer, Patricia Hendricks, and she sounded concerned. George, I just got a very interesting phone call from Veronica's attorney. They're threatening to file for an emergency custody hearing. On what grounds? They're claiming you're mentally unstable and potentially dangerous to the children. They want supervised visitation only. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let me guess. They have evidence of my supposed instability. They claim you've been drinking heavily, making threats against Veronica and her boyfriend, and exhibiting increasingly erratic behavior. The party Saturday night is being presented as evidence of your deteriorating mental state. Of course it is. What else? They also claim you've been stalking Veronica and harassing her boyfriend. There's a police report filed this morning, alleging that you've been following them and making threatening phone calls. I sat down heavily in my office chair. Patricia, You know that's all bullshit, right? I know you, George, and I don't believe a word of it. But I also know that family court judges err on the side of caution when children's safety is allegedly at risk. So what do? We fight it. But we need to be smart about how we do it. No more public humiliation tactics. No more confrontations with Darren. We handle this through proper legal channels. After I hung up with Patricia, I sat in my office staring out the window at the construction site across the street. Veronica and Darren were escalating things, trying to use the legal system to finish what they'd started with lies and manipulation. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They were fighting someone who had nothing left to lose and no intention of backing down. I called Frank Morrison. I need more dirt on Darren Lowe. Everything you can find. George, your lawyer probably told you to lay low. My lawyer told me not to confront them directly. She didn't say anything about gathering evidence. Frank sighed. What kind of evidence are you looking for? The kind that proves he's not the upstanding citizen he's pretending to be in court documents. The kind that shows a pattern of targeting vulnerable women. The kind that makes a family court judge think twice about letting him anywhere near my children. That's going to take time. How much time? A week, maybe 2. But George, you need to be careful. If they're really planning to claim you're stalking them, you can't be anywhere near either of them. Don't worry about that. I have other plans for Mr. Lowe. That evening, I drove to Flex Appeal Gym. Not to confront Darren. Patricia had been very clear about avoiding direct contact, but to have a conversation with some of his employees. Specifically, his assistant manager, a woman named Jessica who'd been working there for 3 years and had seen enough of Darren's behavior to have some interesting stories. I found her in the parking lot after her shift, loading gym equipment into her car. Jessica, I'm George Bishop. I was hoping I could talk to you for a few minutes. She looked nervous. If this is about Darren and your wife, I don't want to get involved. I understand your position, but I'm not asking you to get involved in my marriage problems. I'm asking about Darren's business practices and his treatment of employees. What do you mean? I mean the sexual harassment complaints that were filed and quietly settled. I mean the membership fees that went missing from the accounts. I mean the way he treats female employees when he thinks no one is watching. Jessica looked around the parking lot to make sure we were alone. How do you know about the harassment complaints? I know a lot of things about Darren that he probably wishes I didn't. The question is whether you're willing to tell the truth about what you've witnessed. We talked for 20 minutes. Jessica told me about the 3 different women who'd filed complaints against Darren for inappropriate behavior. She told me about the missing money and the creative bookkeeping that kept the gym afloat. Most importantly, she told me about Darren's pattern of targeting wealthy female clients for special attention. Your wife isn't the first married woman he's gotten involved with, Jessica said. There was a woman last year, and another one the year before that. He specifically goes after women who are unhappy in their marriages and have access to money. Would you be willing to testify to that in court? If it means getting that creep away from more victims, yes. The next morning brought another phone call from Patricia. We have a problem, George. The custody hearing has been moved up to this Friday. That's only 4 days away. I know. They're claiming it's an emergency situation that requires immediate intervention. What kind of emergency? They filed a police report yesterday claiming you drove by Veronica's sister's house multiple times and left threatening voicemails on Darren's phone. I felt my blood pressure spike. That's completely false. I haven't been anywhere near Linda's house, and I haven't called Darren once. I believe you, but we need to prove it. Do you have any witnesses to your whereabouts yesterday? I was at work all day, then had dinner with Andrew. After that, I went home and watched television. Good. I'll get statements from Andrew and anyone else who saw you. We also need to address the allegations about your mental state and drinking. What kind of allegations? They claim you've been consuming alcohol during work hours, making irrational business decisions, and exhibiting paranoid behavior. They have statements from several people who supposedly witnessed this behavior. Let me guess. people who happened to be at Saturday night's party. Some of them, yes. But George, we need to take this seriously. If the judge believes their version of events, you could lose custody of your children. That afternoon, I did something I probably should have done weeks earlier. I called my kids. Emma and Jake had been staying with Veronica at her sister's house, and I hadn't spoken to them since the separation began. "Daddy?" Emma's voice was small and confused. "When are you coming to get us?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Mommy and I are having some grown-up problems that we need to work out first." "Are you and Mommy getting divorced?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "We might be, Emma, but no matter what happens between Mommy and me, we both love you and Jake very much." "Mommy says you're sick. She says that's why we can't come home." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "I'm not sick, honey. Mommy and I just disagree about some things, and sometimes when grown-ups disagree, they say things that aren't true. I want to come home, Daddy. I miss my room and my toys. I want you to come home too. I'm working very hard to make that happen." After I hung up, I sat in my office and stared at the family photo on my desk. 2 days earlier, I'd felt like I was winning this war. Now I realized that Veronica and Darren were playing a much more dangerous game than I'd anticipated. They weren't just trying to steal my business. They were trying to steal my children. That's when I decided to stop playing defense and go back on the attack. But this time, I wasn't going to settle for public humiliation. This time, I was going to destroy them completely. Friday morning arrived with the kind of gray, drizzling rain that seemed to match my mood perfectly. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for 10 o'clock, and I'd barely slept the night before. Patricia had warned me that these hearings were unpredictable, especially when one side was making serious allegations about mental instability and potential danger to children. I arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early, wearing my best suit and carrying a briefcase full of evidence that I hoped would expose Veronica and Darren's lies. Patricia met me in the hallway outside the courtroom, looking grim. "How bad is it?" I asked. "They've got statements from 6 people claiming they witnessed erratic behavior from you. They've got the police reports about alleged stalking and threatening phone calls. And they've got a psychologist who's prepared to testify that your behavior at the party demonstrates a dangerous lack of judgment. What about our evidence? We've got Andrew's statement about your whereabouts when the alleged stalking occurred. We've got Jessica's testimony about Darren's pattern of targeting married women. And we've got all the documentation about their scheme to defraud you. Is that enough?" Patricia hesitated. "It should be. But family court judges are very conservative when it comes to children's safety. If there's even a small chance that you might be unstable, the judge might err on the side of caution." When we entered the courtroom, I saw Veronica sitting at the plaintiff's table with her attorney, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit. Darren was there too, dressed in a business suit that probably cost more than most people made in a week. He looked confident, almost smug. Judge Margaret Walsh was a stern-looking woman in her 50s, with gray hair and no-nonsense demeanor. She'd been on the family court bench for 12 years, and according to Patricia, she had a reputation for being fair but extremely protective of children's welfare. Veronica's attorney, Susan Martinez, presented their case first. She painted a picture of me as an increasingly unstable man who'd become obsessed with revenge against his estranged wife and her boyfriend. She described the party as a public breakdown, and the evidence I'd presented as the product of an unhealthy obsession with surveillance and control. "Your Honor," Martinez said, "Mr. Bishop has demonstrated a pattern of escalating behavior that poses a clear danger to his children's emotional and physical well-being. The evidence shows that he's been drinking heavily, making threats, and engaging in stalking behavior. We're asking for immediate supervised visitation only, pending a full psychological evaluation." She called 3 witnesses to support her claims. The first was a neighbor who claimed he'd seen me drinking beer while mowing my lawn at 10 in the morning. The second was a woman from Veronica's book club who said I'd seemed angry and paranoid when she'd encountered me at the grocery store. The third was a former client who claimed I'd been erratic and unprofessional during a recent business meeting. All three testimonies were carefully crafted half-truths designed to make me sound unstable without being outright lies. The neighbor had seen me drinking beer while doing yard work on a Saturday afternoon, not 10 in the morning. The book club woman had encountered me at the store the day after I'd discovered the affair, when I was understandably upset. The former client was referring to a meeting where I'd been distracted because I was dealing with my marriage falling apart. But in the context of a custody hearing, these incidents sounded damning. When it was Patricia's turn to present our case, she started with the evidence of Veronica and Darren's scheme. She showed the judge the text messages, the financial documents, and the timeline of their plot to defraud me. Your Honor, Mr. Bishop is not the unstable aggressor that opposing counsel has portrayed. He's the victim of an elaborate scheme designed to steal his business and destroy his reputation. The behavior they're characterizing as erratic is actually the reasonable response of a man who discovered that his wife and her lover were plotting to ruin him. She called Andrew to testify about my character and professional behavior. She called Jessica to testify about Darren's pattern of targeting married women. She called Frank Morrison to testify about the evidence he'd gathered proving that the stalking allegations were false. But I could see from Judge Walsh's expression that she was struggling with the competing narratives. On one hand, she had evidence that I was the victim of a serious betrayal and conspiracy. On the other hand, she had multiple witnesses claiming that I was behaving erratically and potentially dangerously. The turning point came when Martinez called Darren to testify. He took the stand looking confident and sincere, describing himself as a concerned citizen who was worried about the safety of two innocent children. Mr. Bishop has been following us, Your Honor, Darren said, his voice full of fake concern. He's made threatening phone calls to my business. He's created an atmosphere of fear and intimidation that's affecting not just Veronica, but Emma and Jake as well. Can you give the court specific examples of this threatening behavior? Martinez asked. Last Tuesday, he called my gym and told my receptionist that he was going to destroy everything I care about. On Thursday, he drove by the house where Veronica is staying at least 4 times. The children saw him and became very upset. It was all lies, but Darren delivered them with the practiced sincerity of a con artist who'd spent years manipulating people. That's when Patricia made a decision that probably saved my case. Instead of continuing with our planned defense, she asked the judge for permission to cross-examine Darren immediately. Mr. Lowe, Patricia began, you testified that Mr. Bishop called your gym and made threats. Do you have any recording of this alleged phone call? No, but my receptionist heard it. Is your receptionist here to testify? No, she couldn't make it today. I see. You also testified that Mr. Bishop drove by the house where Mrs. Bishop is staying. How do you know it was Mr. Bishop? I saw him. From where? From the window. Patricia pulled out a folder. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence showing that Mr. Lowe could not have seen Mr. Bishop from the house in question because Mr. Lowe was not at that house on Thursday. According to his gym's scheduling records, he was conducting personal training sessions from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Thursday, the same time he claims to have witnessed this alleged stalking. Darren's face went pale. The times might be confused. It could have been a different day. Could it? Because we also have cell phone records showing that Mr. Bishop's phone was connected to cell towers near his office all day Thursday, not near the house where Mrs. Bishop is staying. The judge was now paying very close attention. Mr. Lowe, are you certain about your testimony regarding Thursday? There might be some confusion about the specific day. Patricia pressed her advantage. Mr. Lowe, isn't it true that you've been arrested twice for fraud in the past 5 years? Martinez jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Lowe's past legal issues are not relevant to this custody hearing. They're absolutely relevant, Patricia countered. because they go to his credibility as a witness and his character as someone who's now living with Mrs. Bishop and potentially influencing the children. Judge Walsh considered for a moment. I'll allow it. Mr. Lowe, please answer the question. The charges were dropped, Darren said weakly. But you were arrested? Yes. And isn't it true that you've had restraining orders filed against you by 2 previous romantic partners? Those were misunderstandings. Patricia pulled out another document. Your Honor, I'd like to present testimony from 3 women who've had relationships with Mr. Lowe. All 3 describe a pattern of financial manipulation and emotional abuse. All 3 describe him specifically targeting women who were financially vulnerable or going through difficult divorces. The courtroom was silent as Patricia read excerpts from the statements. By the time she finished, Darren looked like he wanted to crawl under the table, and even Martinez seemed to realize that her case was falling apart. Judge Walsh called a 30-minute recess to review all the evidence. When she returned, her expression was stern. This case presents a complex situation, she began. On one hand, I have allegations about Mr. Bishop's mental state and behavior that cannot be ignored. On the other hand, I have compelling evidence that these allegations may be part of a deliberate campaign to manipulate this court and deprive Mr. Bishop of his parental rights. She looked directly at Veronica and Darren. I am particularly troubled by the inconsistencies in Mr. Lowe's testimony and the evidence suggesting that false police reports may have been filed in this case. Then she turned to me. However, Mr. Bishop, I am also concerned about your decision to handle your marital problems through public humiliation rather than proper legal channels. While I understand your anger, your methods were inappropriate and potentially harmful to your children. My heart sank. It sounded like she was about to give Veronica exactly what she wanted. Therefore, Judge Walsh continued, I am ordering the following. Mr. Bishop will retain joint custody of his children, with the current living arrangement continuing temporarily while both parties undergo court-mandated counseling. However, Mr. Lowe is prohibited from having any unsupervised contact with the children until a full background investigation can be completed. She banged her gavel. Furthermore, I am referring the allegations of false police reports and perjury to the district attorney's office for investigation. This court will not tolerate attempts to manipulate the legal system through fraudulent claims. As we left the courthouse, Patricia was cautiously optimistic. It's not a complete victory, but it's much better than supervised visitation, and the judge's referral to the DA could cause serious problems for Veronica and Darren. But I wasn't satisfied with a partial victory. Veronica and Darren had tried to steal my children using lies and false accusations. They'd tried to manipulate the legal system and destroy what was left of my family. It was time to finish what they'd started. The district attorney's investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks of Judge Walsh's referral, Detective Ray Collins from the Fraud Division was asking some very pointed questions about the false police reports and perjured testimony. I met with Detective Collins at his office downtown, a cramped space that smelled like coffee and disappointment. He was a thin man in his 40s with tired eyes and the demeanor of someone who'd seen every scam in the book. Mr. Bishop, we've been looking into the allegations made against you, and frankly, they don't hold up under scrutiny, he said, flipping through a thick file. The phone records don't match the claimed times, the witnesses have inconsistent stories, and Mr. Lowe's testimony in court directly contradicts his own gym's scheduling records. So what happens now? Now we build a case for filing false police reports and perjury. Both are felonies in Massachusetts. If convicted, they could be looking at significant jail time. I felt a surge of satisfaction, but it was tempered by the knowledge that legal justice moved slowly. I wanted something more immediate, more personal. That opportunity came the following week when I learned that Darren's gym was hosting its annual fitness challenge competition. It was a big event that drew participants from all over the Boston area, complete with local media coverage and corporate sponsors. I had an idea that would give me the public vindication I'd been craving. I called Jessica, Darren's former assistant manager who'd testified on my behalf. "I need a favor," I said, "and it might get a little messy." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that ensures Darren Lowe never manipulates another woman or destroys another family." She was quiet for a moment. "What do you need me to do?" The plan was simple, but devastating. Jessica still had access to the gym's social media accounts and email lists. She also had copies of all the harassment complaints and financial irregularities that Darren had tried to cover up over the years. On the morning of the fitness challenge, while Darren was busy playing host to 200 competitors and their families, Jessica would upload everything to the gym's Facebook page, Instagram account, and email newsletter. Financial records showing missing membership fees, harassment complaints from female employees, screenshots of Darren's text messages with married clients, and most damaging of all, a detailed timeline of his relationship with Veronica, including their scheme to defraud me. But I wanted to be there to see his reaction in person. So I registered for the competition under a fake name, using a baseball cap and sunglasses to avoid being recognized. The gym was packed with people when I arrived Saturday morning. Darren was in his element, working the crowd like a politician running for office. He wore a tight-fitting tank top that showed off his physique and a smile that probably fooled most people into thinking he was a decent human being. I positioned myself near the back of the crowd and waited. At exactly 10 o'clock, Jessica executed our plan. I watched as people throughout the gym began pulling out their phones, checking social media, and showing their screens to friends. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Conversations stopped. People started staring at Darren with expressions ranging from confusion to disgust. Parents began gathering up their children and heading for the exits. Darren was still oblivious, standing at the front of the gym with a microphone, trying to get everyone's attention for the opening ceremony. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 5th Annual Flex Appeal Fitness Challenge," he announced. "We've got an amazing day planned for you, with competitions in 5 different categories and prizes worth over $10,000. That's when someone in the crowd shouted, "Hey Darren, is it true you've been stealing money from the membership accounts?" Darren's smile faltered. "I'm sorry, what?" Another voice. "What about the sexual harassment complaints? How many women have you assaulted?" Now Darren looked genuinely confused and frightened. He could see people leaving, could sense the hostile energy building in the room, but he didn't understand what was happening. "I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding," he said into the microphone. That's when I stepped forward, pulling off my sunglasses and baseball cap. "No misunderstanding, Darren, just the truth finally coming out." The recognition hit him like a physical blow. His face went white, and he nearly dropped the microphone. "George, what are you doing here?" "I'm here to watch your world collapse the same way you tried to collapse mine." I looked around at the crowd of increasingly angry people. "Ladies and gentlemen, in case you haven't checked social media in the last few minutes, you might be interested to know that the man you've been giving your money to is a fraud, a thief, and a predator." Someone in the crowd held up their phone. "It's all here. Financial records, police reports, everything." Darren tried to regain control. "This is all lies. George Bishop is a mentally unstable man who's been stalking me and my girlfriend." "Your girlfriend?" I laughed. "You mean my wife? The one you conspired with to steal my business and destroy my family?" I pulled out my own phone and held it up. "Should I play the recordings of you bragging about your rich girlfriend for everyone to hear?" The crowd was getting uglier by the minute. People were demanding refunds, threatening to call the police, and sharing the damaging information with anyone who would listen. Darren made a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "Everyone, please. Let's not let one man's vendetta ruin what should be a celebration of fitness and community." "One man's vendetta?" The voice came from the entrance to the gym. Everyone turned to see Veronica walking in, looking haggard and desperate. "George, please. You've won. Isn't that enough?" "Have I won, Veronica? Because last I checked, you and your boyfriend were still trying to take my children away from me. You were still spreading lies about my mental state. You were still trying to destroy everything I've built. She walked toward me through the crowd of hostile faces. The police are investigating us. The DA is talking about pressing charges. Our reputations are destroyed. What more do you want? I want justice. I want everyone in this room to know exactly what kind of people you are. I want your scheme exposed so completely that you'll never be able to hurt another family the way you hurt mine. Darren tried one last desperate play. He jumped down from the platform and started walking toward me aggressively, probably hoping to provoke a physical confrontation that would make me look like the unstable aggressor. You're a sick man, George. You need help. But I was ready for him. As he got within arm's reach, I stepped aside and let his momentum carry him straight into a rack of dumbbells. He went down hard, landing in a tangle of metal weights and bruised ego. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Someone shouted, "World's worst personal trainer!" As Darren struggled to get back on his feet, I grabbed the microphone he'd dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, you came here today expecting a fitness competition. Instead, you got something much more valuable, a lesson in how to recognize and deal with predators and con artists. I looked directly at Darren, who was now bleeding from a cut on his forehead. Some people think they can lie, cheat, and manipulate their way through life without consequences. Today, those consequences have arrived. I turned to address Veronica, who was crying again. As for you, Veronica, you made your choice. You chose a con artist over your family. You chose lies over truth. You chose greed over love. I hope it was worth it. The police arrived about 10 minutes later, called by someone in the crowd who was concerned about the chaos. But by then, Darren's reputation was destroyed beyond repair. Half his members were demanding refunds, his sponsors were pulling out, and the local news crews that had come to cover the fitness competition were now reporting on the scandal instead. Detective Collins was one of the responding officers. He took one look at the situation and shook his head. "Mr. Bishop, please tell me you didn't orchestrate this whole thing." "I didn't orchestrate anything, Detective. I just made sure the truth was available to people who deserve to know it." "And how exactly did the truth become available?" I shrugged. Social media is a powerful tool. Sometimes information finds its way to the right platforms. 3 months later, Darren Lowe was convicted of filing false police reports and perjury. He received 2 years in prison and was ordered to pay restitution to the gym members he'd defrauded. Flex Appeal closed permanently, and Darren's personal training career was effectively over. Veronica pled guilty to conspiracy charges and received probation, but the damage to her reputation was irreversible. She lost her job at the marketing firm and had to move back in with her parents in another state. I got full custody of Emma and Jake after Veronica admitted in court that she was unable to provide a stable home environment. They adjusted remarkably well to being back in their own house, with their own rooms, and their own father who actually wanted to be there. My business not only survived the attempted takeover, but thrived. The publicity from the case, combined with Andrew's unwavering loyalty, actually brought in new clients who appreciated working with someone who wouldn't be intimidated or manipulated. 6 months after the gym incident, I was having dinner with my kids when Emma asked me a question that made me think about everything that had happened. "Daddy, why did Mommy try to hurt you?" I considered my answer carefully. Sometimes people make bad choices, sweetheart. Sometimes they let greed and selfishness cloud their judgment. Your mother made some very bad choices, and she hurt a lot of people because of them. But you stopped her, right? I made sure the truth came out. I made sure that bad people faced consequences for their actions, and I made sure that our family stayed together, even if it looks different now. Jake, who was 9 and understood more than his sister, looked up from his spaghetti. "Are you glad she's gone?" It was a hard question, but I gave him an honest answer. "I'm sad that your mother chose to betray our family. I'm sad that she hurt you and Emma by making the choices she made. But I'm not sad that the lies and manipulation are over. I'm not sad that we can live honestly now, without worrying about schemes and betrayals. Will she ever come back? I don't know, buddy. That would be up to her. But if she does, it would have to be as a different person than the one who left. The person who left was someone I didn't recognize, someone who was willing to hurt the people who loved her most. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat in my home office looking at the family photos I'd never taken down. In some ways, Veronica and Darren had done me a favor. They'd forced me to fight for what mattered most, and in doing so, they'd shown me exactly how strong I could be when my family was threatened. They'd tried to destroy me through lies, manipulation, and betrayal. Instead, they'd destroyed themselves and left me with something more valuable than they could have stolen: the knowledge that I would never again be anyone's victim. I raised my glass of bourbon in a silent toast to the empty house that was now truly mine, to the children sleeping safely upstairs, and to the hard-won peace that comes from standing up to bullies and winning. Some people might call what I did revenge. I prefer to think of it as justice served with a side of poetic irony. Either way, it was exactly what they deserved.